Welcome to the Newark Regional Business Partnerships Engage and Exchange podcast. Join us for business insights and meaningful conversations with NRBP's member organizations. Thank you to our podcast host sponsor, the Martin Tuchman School of Management at NJIT. Additional support for NRBP's Engage and Exchange podcast is provided by PSEG, New Jersey Urban News, Main Street Advisory, LLC. Hello, I'm Ferlanda Fox-Nixon, President and CEO of the Newark Regional Business Partnership. We are the premier chamber of commerce for the greater Newark region. Our guest today is Robert L. Johnson, Partner and Chief Diversity Officer and Director of the Corporate Law Practice Group at Gibbons, PC. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We like to begin by learning a little bit about you, so tell us about Robert Johnson.
I was born in Waco, Texas. I grew up there my entire life, at least the first part of my life. I played basketball. I got myself to a pretty high ranking in Texas. I ended up taking a basketball scholarship to Rice University in Houston. I was a 4-year starter there. I mentioned my senior year I had a really good year and it opened some opportunities for me. I ended up being number 12 in the nation in scoring. I was invited to Chicago Bulls preseason camp and the Golden State Warriors. Immediately got cut, so I probably wouldn't be here now. But then I played 2 years in France, and one in Chalon and one in Poissy. And then I played also in the CBA in Bismarck, North Dakota, and that's where I was like, it's time to get a new job, because when it was negative 40 with the wind chill and you coming from Texas, that was very unique to me. So I could not handle that, so I needed to get a new job. So that's why I just grabbed an LSAT book off of a Barnes & Noble shelf and did my first year law school at Thurgood Marshall in Houston, Texas. I transferred to Seton Hall University Law School, so Seton Hall Law School, and that's how I got out east.
Okay.
And I came out here in 2005, and I've kind of been here since. From law school, that's where I transitioned to my law firm, Gibbons, where I'm currently a partner there now. But before that, I left Gibbons in 2010, 2012, and I was in Governor's Council. And I was counsel for the Department of Banking and Insurance, Consumer Affairs, Alcohol Beverage Control. And my job primarily there was kind of advise on all these bills, and I'd either recommend a veto or a CV, and I'd rewrite the CV, or you should sign this. So that was an interesting experience because I got to see New Jersey from the kind of top, unfiltered, and how it works, even before I even really knew counties here.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what attracted you to Gibbons?
What attracted me to Gibbons, it's weirdly, I was applying to a bunch of different firms because as a transfer student, you kind of miss the kind of on-campus interview session. So it was like I didn't really have anything. I needed a job, right? So I did really well my first year, but I was kind of out of their OCI system. So I was just applying to a bunch of places, and Gibbons reached back out, and then I did an internship during my second year, and over the summer, and they liked me, and I worked there my full time, which I probably shouldn't have done, my third year. So people thought I was a night student, but I really was a day student. So I just really had no time, and I was working there, and which was helpful. And I made a good impression on folks, and they offered me work once I graduated and passed the bar.
And how would you describe Gibbons? What type of law firm is it?
We're a full service law firm. We fluctuate between 160 to 200 plus lawyers. We're a leading law firm in New Jersey. We have 7 offices. The hub is New Jersey, New York, Delaware, Florida, Pennsylvania. Our focus is middle market, so we have 40 different practice areas, and it's kind of broken down into 9 core practice groups. We have commercial litigation, products liability, white collar defense, and on the transactional side, we have employment, which is typically employer side, intellectual property. That's a signature practice of the firm, with copyrights, trademarks, and patents. And we have an insolvency bankruptcy group, government affairs, real estate, environmental, which is in transactional, which is heavily involved with the NRBP, and I'm in a corporate group.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are some initiatives that you're excited about that your law firm has been involved in?
Yeah, in addition to kind of providing excellent legal services to our client, that's what pays us. We've been headquartered in Newark since 1926. So I think, one of the things, in addition to legal work, we want to kind of engage with our community, right? And not just from kind of social civic. I just think it makes good business sense to engage with your community. So we do a lot of commitments that kind of our employees appreciate and the community appreciate. We've done some of our signature initiatives. We had a Gibbons Cares. There's a Gibbons Women Initiative. There's a Gibbons Diversity Institute, which I kind of run. There's a John J. Gibbons Fellowship in Public Interest and Constitutional Law, which is really unique, and it attracts a lot of public interest lawyers where we kind of pay them a big law firm salary, but they can kind of take cases that normally couldn't afford that. So yeah, and in addition to that, I'm on the board of the African American Chamber of Commerce, which is
how we first
that's
met.
how we first met. We were initially both, and I was really impressed with you then, still now.
Thank you.
And then that really got me kind of plugged in to kind of business issues, and particularly Black business issues, which are important to me. I think growing up from the South, I think, especially going through law school, you take a common law and criminal procedures, you can see systematically how just kind of Black folks in general have been legislatively discriminated. I think, America generally discriminates as different groups come in, but I think some of the unique things with Black folks is it was legislatively done. So I think, I'm big on you should legislatively correct that. But being on the board on the chamber gave me an opportunity, because most people think if you're doing kind of public interest law, you're kind of getting people out of jail, or you're doing something in that vein, which is good and necessary. But I also think it's also necessary that if you're a transaction lawyer, if you're an IP lawyer, if you're a trademark lawyer, if you're a patent lawyer, Black people have businesses too, right? And they need help in that area too, because it's a good investment too, because you help them and then they grow, and then all of a sudden they can pay your ridiculous legal bills. So that's But working with the chamber, one of the big things that which you helped kind of lead, was trying to address that disparity study in the state, which I think a lot of people aren't aware of the systemic exclusion of minority businesses, in particular Black businesses, from state public procurement opportunities, which is egregious, and I don't think a lot of people know that. If you just that report was measured from 2015 to 2020, and it was released in 2024. Right. And the numbers were just horrible. You had, in the construction spend space, which is the most, you had white-owned businesses getting about $11 billion, 98% of the spend, compared to Black-owned businesses getting, $3 million, right, representing 0.03% of the spend. So, how that can be, I guarantee you in Alabama or Mississippi, they have higher numbers than that. And so that kind of shocked me. So, working with you, I think, you identified a lot of, in particular with New York, their supply diversity laws where they have a 33% MWBE utilization rate, trying to get something like that over here in New Jersey, and kind of fighting with the internal, state politics to kind of correct that. I think I'm not a government affairs attorney, but learning about that and kind of spearheading that and getting it to a lobbyist to kind of move it through the legislature, I think that's probably, I've worked on a lot of large corporate transactions, but this has been, in my professional practice, the thing that's kind of meant the most to me, because that report said $1 billion should have went to minority women businesses.
So now there's been some legislation passed to attempt to rectify the disparity. I know you're on a crusade to
really make it have more teeth
Yeah.
in it. So did you want to talk about some of the things that you think are left to be addressed?
Yeah, they initially said like, "Oh, we're going to address this. Here's the 13 bill package." You don't have to go to law school to know that a bill is not a law, right? So technically, none of this stuff's been passed. If something's been passed, it doesn't. That's marketing. It doesn't address the issue. There's a bill A4586. Which is, I'll give the title, is to establish the Minority and Women-Owned Business State Contractor Remedies Act. That's not passed. That's not even been voted on in the Assembly. It was second reference. It came out of a committee without enforcement mechanisms. So I don't know how you pass I don't know why you would want a law that doesn't have an enforcement. If like I'm speeding, I get a fine, right? That's the deterrent to make me change my behavior, right? Otherwise, it's just marketing. And I think what that bill needs, and it's not like I'm brilliant. I'm just copying the homework from New York because they do it right across the river. They have something called liquidated damages. That's the enforcement tool, which basically, like if a prime contractor gets a big contract from a state contracting unit, and they say, hey, the state says we have a 20% MWB aspirational goal because it can't be mandatory because that's unconstitutional. Could you help us, hit that goal if we give you this project? And as the prime contractor, you're like, yes, because I want that $1 million plus contract. But, if you contractually say that, you need to at least put good faith effort. And that's the bare minimum of teeth. When I say teeth, that's brittle dentures. But, the fact that that seems to be too much, says a lot. And but the chamber's been pushing forward. We have lobbyists engaged to kind of point this out and educate legislators about this. But I don't think much education needs to be in the fact when you have one black woman-owned businesses getting one contract in 5 years in the construction space out of thousands. So I don't. What are we explaining here? Or you see 0.03%, or you see the disparity. They say disparity. That's not a disparity when one group is getting 11 billion and one group is getting 3 million. I don't know. We need to come up with a new word for what that means.
So let's pivot to Gibbons' involvement in the community. Are you working with local high schools, community organizations that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. We've had a long-standing, over decades, with New Jersey LEAP. They get a bunch of high school students and they kind of introduce them to the law. Now it's kind of expanded to they're introducing them to, asset management firms, private equity firms. It's really expanded. It's a fantastic program. I just went to that gala last week. You got kids going to Yale, Columbia, Harvard, out of that cohort. So, all from the Newark area. Yeah, and how it started is from early high school, you introduced them to what does a lawyer do? I think law school does a poor job in telling you what a lawyer does. But how we would do it was all right, we have someone from corporate. What does a corporate attorney do? All right, you have an IP attorney. What does an IP attorney do? Right? It's like a week-long program. They do kind of mock trials where they get up and stand and speak, because I think everyone thinks that's what being a lawyer is, going to court or speaking in front of a judge. But I wanted to kind of, over the years, I hadn't done it recently, but over the years, I've used to do a kind of venture capital kind of simulation, all right, and explain to them what these concepts, what does this actually mean? You may hear these words and how does it play out? I was all right, you come up with the idea, and you group of students, you're the investors with the money, right? You're going to negotiate how much percentage with them that you're going to give them of your ownership of your product, right? And then you're going to hire employees. And once you get the money, how do you scale? So I just kind of get those concepts in their head early, because a lot of these students, their parents don't work at hedge funds, or they don't work at private equity companies. But when they get to these schools, they're going to be exposed to people that do. So at least they understand the concept. And, you can get into this area with law, right?
Right.
So that's some of the stuff that I'm really proud of, that partnership with LEAP, and that's been ongoing for years.
Very good. Now, we've talked a lot about your involvement with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. As you know, NRBP is the premier chamber of commerce serving the greater Newark region. What is it that you like about chambers of commerce and the value that you think that they bring to the business ecosystem?
Well, I think chambers of commerce, NRBP, they bring together businesses, right? And I'm in the client service of business. A lot of our clients are members of NRBP, or members of the chamber, right? Mm-hmm. More of them are actually members of NRBP. Mm-hmm. I think our real estate group does a lot of work, and they're much more involved. But a lot of their clients are members, right? Mm-hmm. And I think you put on really good programming, you bring folks together. I think people are really busy in the professional services, and your time is the thing that you don't really control, especially as a lawyer. I bill in units of time. But anytime I go to an NRBP event or chamber event, it's the best use of my time that I don't actually have, So you make it a point to make it in any type of kind of association. And it's kind of goes back to what we initially pointed out. It's like in your community, you're doing business with people in your community. And it's a good hub to connect with people who do business in your community.
Okay. I like that answer. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for enlightening us on Gibbons and what Gibbons is doing in the community, as well as what you personally are doing to address economic disparity in the state of New Jersey. All of it is very valuable, and we appreciate what you do.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. As always, I would like to leave you with a quote. The biggest adventure you can ever take is to live the life of your dreams. From media mogul Oprah Winfrey. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to NRBP's Engage in Exchange podcast. Tune in next time for more NRBP member organization insights. For more information about our organization, visit www.newarkrbp.org. Thank you again to our podcast host sponsor, the Martin Tuchman School of Management at NJIT. Additional support for NRBP's Engage in Exchange podcast is provided by PSEG, New Jersey Urban News, Main Street Advisory, LLC.